The desert winds had picked up again, stirring thin wisps of red dust across the flat horizon. Dax Marin stood on the porch of his ranch house, one booted foot resting on the bottom rail, a cup of synth coffee in hand. It had been 5 years since he left the military. 5 years since he'd traded the stars for peace and silence on the edge of the new Sonora expanse. And up until now, peace is what he'd had. That changed the moment he heard the hum. It started low, like a swarm of insects, but grew into a rhythmic, mechanical buzzing that vibrated through the dry ground. Dax squinted into the setting sun. At first he thought it was a dust devil, or maybe an old crawler from the neighboring settlement limping through the dunes. But when the gleaming black shapes broke through the dust, he knew better. 4 hovercrafts, uniform in size and color, hovered in a tight formation above his front field. Below them, smaller surveillance drones zipped in wide arcs, scanning the area. On each craft was a sleek emblem, silver and triangular, bearing the inscription HOA 12 Security Division. Dax's brow furrowed. HOA? That made no sense. His ranch was far outside the colony grid, deliberately positioned beyond the boundary lines of any homeowners association. He'd checked the zoning 5 times before buying the land. No bureaucrats, no code enforcers, just solar fields, hydro pumps, and quiet. The lead hovercraft slowly descended, releasing a hiss of steam as it landed. A hatch opened, and out stepped a humanoid officer clad in black carbon fiber armor. His visor glowed red, and a robotic voice barked, "Citizen Marin, you are in violation of HOA Code 42B. Unauthorized energy field detected. Stand down for inspection." Dax didn't move. He sipped his coffee. "You got the wrong lot. This property's not under HOA jurisdiction." The officer tilted his head, clearly receiving data from a central network. "This territory has been annexed into the HOA 12 Unified Zoning Map as of Cycle 232. Your refusal to register is itself a breach. You will comply or be subject to enforcement protocols." Annexed? That was impossible. He hadn't received a single notice. No alerts, no comms, no data pings, and yet here they were, on his land, acting like they had every right. Dax walked down the porch steps slowly, calmly. "Listen," he said, his voice steady. "I've been off-grid since before HOA 12 was even charted. I don't use your water, don't tap your grid, and I sure as hell didn't agree to any annexation." The drones buzzed louder, circling now, scanning his home's perimeter. Dax caught a flash of blue light as one drone attempted to map his solar infrastructure. He clenched his jaw. That was no simple visual scan. That was a data siphon. They were mapping his entire system in real time. "Final warning," the officer intoned. "Shut down your energy matrix or we will initiate a full compliance operation." Dax stared at the officer for a long second. Then he turned and walked back toward the porch. "You do what you gotta do," he muttered. As he stepped back, inside, he tapped a small panel on the door frame. Silently, the house came alive. Hidden panels opened. Systems long dormant hummed to life. Defense protocols reactivated. An old friend, his ranch's security AI, spoke in his ear. "Perimeter. Breach detected. Shall I prepare response measures, Commander Marin?" He gave a slow nod. "Yeah, Juno. Let's show them what happens when you knock on the wrong door." Outside, the drones adjusted formation. The officer raised a hand. Inside, Dax smiled. It wasn't just his ranch they'd walked onto. It was a battlefield. "You said, please expand chapter number 2 in 600 words without heading." ChatGPT said the standoff didn't end that night. By morning, the hovercrafts were still there, drones buzzing low, scanning every inch of his ranch like vultures circling a wounded beast. Dax hadn't slept. Not that he needed to. Years in deep space had trained his body to function on adrenaline and instinct alone. He sat inside the command room, a steel-reinforced bunker beneath the house, watching the feeds from his perimeter sensors. "Juno, give me a sweep of their transmission frequencies," he said, fingers tapping on the console. The AI's voice, smooth and almost amused, replied, "Already on it. They're piggybacking on a civilian enforcement band, but there's a secondary layer, encrypted and rerouted through a quantum lattice. Definitely not standard HOA protocol. Dax leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. They're hiding something. Mm-hmm, Juno replied. And it's not their lawn care regulations. He pulled up a zoning overlay of the area, matched with archival records from planetary land registries. Just as he thought. His land had not been part of HOA 12 last cycle, but now, according to the new map, it had been silently added into a gray zone marked temporary administrative jurisdiction. The addition had no citizen notifications, no hearings, no chance to dispute. Juno highlighted a small line of code in the registry update. This came through via proxy server 2 weeks ago. You'll love the source. The signature at the end of the update wasn't from HOA 12. It was from Galaxis Conglomerate, the interstellar megacorporation known for its tight grip on industrial planets. Dax's frown deepened. HOA 12 wasn't running this show. They were just the boots on the ground, blunt instruments for something bigger. But why? What made his patch of land so valuable? Dax pulled up schematics from his own archives. Data. From his time in the Navy, when he'd surveyed this region for energy anomalies. He remembered finding faint signatures of quantum ore, an ultra-rare mineral used in jump drive cores and AI processors. Too deep to mine at the time, not profitable. But now? With refined tech and remote extraction tools, it was worth a fortune. They're not here for codes or energy violations, Dax muttered. They want the ore. Bingo, Juno chimed in. They're using HOA 12 as a front. They muscle settlers off their land with regulation nonsense, then swoop in with a resource management claim and mine the place clean. Dax's stomach turned, not with fear, but with fury. He'd seen it before on other planets, colonies being bought up one regulation at a time. Settlers turned into tenants, independence swallowed by protocol, and now they'd tried it on him. He activated a hidden uplink buried in the floor. It hadn't been used in years, not since his Navy days. It linked directly to an old contact in the outer system resistance, if they were still alive. Sending encrypted ping might take hours to bounce through the satellites, Juno warned. Let it ride, Dax said. We may need backup if this goes full scale. Outside, the officer from yesterday was back, this time with a larger unit. 2 more hovercrafts had joined the fleet. One deployed a containment barrier, a flickering dome of energy designed to isolate land from outside communication and entry. Too late. His message was already bouncing through the stars. Dax watched through the cameras as the officer approached again, standing just past the front gate. His voice echoed through the ranch speakers. Final notice. This property is now under HOA 12 quarantine. Compliance protocols escalate in 1 hour. Dax stared at the screen, then slowly stood. Well, he said with a tired grin, let's make that hour a long one. He turned to Juno. Time to prep the surprises. They're not walking away clean. You said, please expand chapter number 3 in 600 words without heading to chat GPT. Said, the first shot came from the sky. A precision stun burst, non-lethal supposedly, fired from one of the new hovercrafts hovering just above the containment barrier. It lanced through the dusty air like a spear of blue lightning, targeting one of Dax's solar collector arrays. The burst hit, crackling with energy, but instead of disabling the system, it rebounded in a sharp arc, flashing back into the sky and narrowly missing one of the surveillance drones. Juno chuckled through the speakers. Reflective shields, calibrated nicely. Should I thank them for helping us test? Dax didn't respond. He was already in motion, strapping on the last piece of his exo-harness. The armor was old, military-grade from his time with the Intergalactic Navy, but it still hummed with purpose, power cells fully charged and neural links synced. He felt it wrap around his spine, plugging into his senses like a second skin. Outside, the drones began changing formation, now deploying riot protocols. Flashes of red blinked across their hulls as they dropped canisters laced with nanofog, tech designed to disable electronics, blind optics, and disrupt small machines. But Dax wasn't using commercial systems. His tech was homegrown, hardened, and built with battlefield resilience. He'd planned for this, maybe not for HOA cops, but for something like this. Activate sub-level defense net, he said. On it, Juno replied. Beneath the ranch, an array of compact EMP pylons came to life. Within seconds, a pulse shot out in every direction, disrupting the nanofog and frying the weaker drones mid-air. Sparks rained down like fireflies in a storm. The larger craft backed off, recalibrating their approach. Inside the command bunker, lights flickered as power rerouted to secondary systems. Dax didn't flinch. This was how he worked. On the edge, in the chaos. "Let's give them something to chew on," he muttered. He moved to the weapons console and tapped the icon marked Odin. Instantly, a targeting schematic opened on the screen. Orbital cannon interface. "Juno, confirm uplink with the Skywatch platform." "Confirmed. Charging orbital lens. One shot, high heat. You sure you want to use it?" "They think this is about code enforcement," Dax said, eyes cold. "Time they learned it's a war." High above the planet, a stealth satellite, long forgotten by most governments, rotated into position. It belonged to no one now. Except Dax, Seko. The first shot came from the sky, a precision stun burst, non-lethal, supposedly, fired from one of the new hovercrafts hovering just above the containment barrier. It lanced through the dusty air like a spear of blue lightning, targeting one of Dax's solar collector arrays. The burst hit, crackling with energy, but instead of disabling the system, it rebounded in a sharp arc, flashing back into the sky and narrowly missing one of the surveillance drones. Juno chuckled through the speakers. "Reflective shields calibrated. Nicely. Should I thank them for helping us test?" Dax didn't respond. He was already in motion, strapping on the last piece of his exo-harness. The armor was old, military grade from his time with the Intergalactic Navy, but it still hummed with purpose, power cells fully charged and neural link synced. He felt it wrap around his spine, plugging into his senses like a second skin. Outside, the drones began changing formation, now deploying riot protocols. Flashes of red blinked across their hulls as they dropped canisters laced with nanofog, tech designed to disable electronics, blind optics, and disrupt small machines. But Dax wasn't using commercial systems. His tech was homegrown, hardened, and built with battlefield resilience. He'd planned for this, maybe not for HOA cops, but for something like this. "Activate sub-level defense net," he said. "On it," Juno replied. Beneath the ranch, an array of compact EMP pylons came to life. Within seconds, a pulse shot out in every direction, disrupting the nanofog and frying the weaker drones mid-air. Sparks rained down like fireflies in a storm. The larger craft backed off, recalibrating their approach. Inside the command bunker, lights flickered as power rerouted to secondary systems. Dax didn't flinch. This was how he worked, on the edge, in the chaos. "Let's give them something to chew on," he muttered. He moved to the weapons console and tapped the icon marked Odin. Instantly, a targeting schematic opened on the screen. Orbital cannon interface. "Juno, confirm uplink with the Skywatch platform." "Confirmed. Charging orbital lens. One shot. High heat. You sure you want to use it?" "They think this is about code enforcement," Dax said, eyes cold. "Time they learned it's a war." High above the planet, a stealth satellite, long forgotten by most governments, rotated into position. It belonged to no one now, except Dax. Seconds later, a bolt of white-hot plasma screamed down from the heavens, striking the dirt just 30 meters in front of the lead hovercraft. The impact shook the desert like thunder, leaving a molten crater that glowed like a second sun. The hovercraft reeled, engines whining in protest, and retreated behind the containment wall. The speakers outside crackled. "Marin, you've escalated. This beyond protocol. Stand down immediately or face full tactical response." Dax keyed in his reply through the voice system. "You stepped on my land uninvited. You tried to disable my systems. You trespassed, threatened, and lied. You think I'm going to roll over because you wear a badge and call it code enforcement?" He paused. "Come and get me then. Let's see how many violations I can rack up." The silence that followed was thick. Then came the unmistakable hum of heavy air transports approaching from the east. Not drones this time. These were bulk dropships, each capable of deploying multiple squads of cyber officers. Juno's voice came through, more serious now. Tactical division en route. ETA 15 minutes. Dax looked at the wide desert horizon, then at the map of his land glowing on the command room wall. Covered in defense zones, trap sectors, hidden launchers. It had taken him years to set it all up. Years of preparation, just in case. He cracked his knuckles and smiled grimly. Then we hold the line. The dropships came in low, their engines emitting a deep vibrating growl that shook the sands like distant thunder. Dax watched from his command deck, the glow of incoming heat signatures, lighting up the sensor grid. They weren't just deploying enforcement officers this time. This was a full tactical team, and they were bringing hardware meant for urban suppression, not frontier law enforcement. Hovering above the ridgeline, one of the dropships released a payload, an autonomous siege crawler, spider-like in form, bristling with plasma lances and net cannons. It landed hard on the cracked earth and immediately began scanning, its blue optical lens sweeping the terrain like a hunting animal. Behind it followed a dozen cyber officers in heavy armor, synchronized and silent, their neural links pulsing in perfect rhythm. "That's not HOA tech," Dax muttered. Juno didn't answer at first. She was already digging through intercepted transmissions, her systems moving faster than any human analyst. When she finally spoke, her tone was cold. "Confirmed. They're not operating under HOA 12 alone anymore. I'm picking up relay traffic to an external command network, encrypted and routed through Galaxis conglomerate servers." Dax felt a bitter rush in his gut. So that's it. They finally stopped pretending. The whole HOA enforcement routine had always felt too polished, too aggressive. Now the truth was out in the open. This wasn't about property violations. It wasn't about zoning lines or unauthorized solar collectors. This was corporate acquisition through force, a soft invasion disguised as local law. He pulled up the geological scans of his land again, the old data from Navy surveys. The ore signature he'd thought was long dormant was now glowing brighter than ever. The tectonic activity in the region had shifted the substrata, pushing the quantum ore vein closer to the surface. That's why they wanted the ranch. That's what they were trying to extract, quietly, by pushing him out with HOA red tape. And when that failed, they escalated. "Juno, patch me into the new Sonora public feed." "Done." Dax stood in front of the comms console, the camera activating with a soft click. His face appeared across colony networks, a live broadcast bouncing through local relays, dark nets, and independent settler comms. No flashy intro, no fancy graphics, just him. "My name is Dax Marin," he began. "I'm a veteran, a citizen of New Sonora, and a landowner in Zone 9. For the past 3 days, I've been under siege, not by pirates, not by insurgents, but by what's supposed to be a civilian homeowners association." He gestured behind him at the feed of drones, hovercrafts, and crawling bots surrounding his property. "They claim I violated zoning laws, but what they didn't tell you is this. HOA 12 is a shell organization. They've been bought out, quietly, by Galaxis conglomerate. The same corporation known for strip mining independent colonies, displacing settlers, and rewriting legal frameworks to suit their operations." He leaned closer to the camera. "They want what's under my land, quantum ore, and they're willing to send armed drones to take it." Juno cut the feed and rerouted it for mass replay, broadcasting across every unregulated channel on the planet. Within minutes, his message was trending across settler forums, whistleblower networks, and resistance nodes. The effect was immediate. Reports started flooding in from other remote homesteads, similar stories of code violations, silent annexations, and pressure campaigns. Some settlers had been bought out. Others had disappeared. Dax watched the data scroll across his screen, a growing wave of outrage rippling across the planet. The mask had slipped, and Galaxis was now exposed. "Reinforcements won't be long now," Juno said. "Let them come," Dax replied, eyes locked on the approaching siege line. "We just turned the tide." Outside, the siege crawler began its charge. Inside, Dax was already moving to meet it. The first round from the siege crawler hit the edge of Dax's eastern perimeter, carving a molten gash into the earth and sending shards of scorched rock flying. The blast shockwave slammed into the side of his main structure, but the reinforced walls held firm. Alarms blared through the compound, half warning, half war cry. Dax was already outside, boots crunching across the sand, armored up and armed, with a modified ion launcher pulled from his personal vault. His exosuit synced with Juno's tactical overlay, marking every enemy unit with red triangles, every defensive position with calming blue. They're overextending on the southeast approach, Juno noted in his ear. Crawler's firepower outpaces its mobility. If we bait it past trench line Theta— I've got it, Dax interrupted, his voice level despite the chaos. Guide my shot. He ducked behind a berm of solar panels, damaged but still conducting, and popped up just long enough to fire. The ion round screamed through the dry air, struck the crawler's left leg joint, and detonated with a burst of blue lightning. Sparks and oil sprayed into the air as the crawler lurched, its balance compromised. One cyber officer advanced on his position, twin pulse rifles glowing white-hot, but Dax anticipated the move. A flick of his wrist activated a proximity turret buried beneath the sand. It erupted from the ground and spat out a volley of magnetically charged flechettes, shredding the Enforcer's outer armor and driving the unit back. Your aim's getting sloppy, Juno teased. I'm just warming up, Dax replied. The crawler, limping and furious, refocused its attention on the house. Its main cannon powered up, the light in its core growing dangerously bright. Dax gritted his teeth and opened a private channel. Juno, it's time. Initiate Protocol Tempest. A pause. Then, confirmed. All non-lethal measures have been exhausted. Initiating Tempest. From beneath the barn, once the most unassuming part of the ranch, a high-frequency array unfolded like mechanical pedals, spinning up with a soft hum. Then, it fired. The Tempest device wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was an electrogravitic disruptor designed to scramble artificial